Okay, hi everybody. I know you can't see my face, but this is Dana. I am a youth services librarian from the East Brunswick Public Library. Now, normally I do Maker Club, which is like a making hands-on crafting activity club for tweens, kids ages like grades 3 to 6. Since we can't meet in the library to do that today, I'm going to show you a quick tutorial on how to make your own DIY comic book. So the supplies that you're going to need are a sheet of cardstock or kind of heavier, thicker paper, maybe like construction paper. You can use regular printer paper for this, but we're making shapes to trace in with this, so it's better if it's like a thicker paper so it doesn't rip while we're using it to trace. You also need just some regular plain paper, printer paper, construction paper, whichever you'd like. A ruler. Some scissors, a hole punch, or if you want you could use a staple, but if you're using a hole punch you'll also need some yarn or some ribbon in order to tie the book together. And then lastly you'll need your crafting supplies. So you can use colored pencils, markers, crayons, whatever you have. These are my favorite art supplies, so I like to use for illustration these micron pencils, which come in a whole bunch of different sizes, ranging from super tiny to ones that are a little bit bigger, like this 08. I also really like these Papermate markers for color, the Pilot pens also for color, and then Sharpies, which are a little bit thicker, so a little bit harder to use when you're working in a space this small. All right, so you need all of those, and of course a pencil and an eraser. So the first thing you're gonna do, which I did ahead of time, is you're going to use your cardstock and your ruler to cut out shapes. Now you could just draw your panels onto the paper, but I find this is the best way to get more professional looking comics. So I've drawn a couple different shapes. This is a 2.5 by 2.5 inch square. For a bigger panel, this is a 2.5 by 5 inch rectangle. We've got an even bigger rectangle, 2.5 by 7.5 inches. And then I did a 3-inch diameter circle. Okay, I drew this one by hand, that's why it's a little wonky, but if you want to, you could use like the base of a cup and make it a little bit neater. These are the shapes that I chose. You can make any kind of shapes that you want, but I like these ones. I think these ones are gonna make kind of the best layout. So next thing you're gonna do, you're gonna take your plain sheet of paper and your shapes and decide how you want to lay them out. So I'm gonna have a seat here. And then you're just gonna use your paper and your shapes to lay out your panels. Kind of think ahead of time about what you want to draw, what sizes would get that best across. I'm gonna start with a circle and a rectangle, try to line them up as best you can. And the reason why I chose these shapes is because you can kind of mix and match them. So you could have, you know, a couple of the smaller squares. If you wanted to do maybe 3 of the smaller squares, you could do a smaller square and a rectangle, a circle and a rectangle, or you could just have the one big rectangle. So I'm gonna do this one as 3. And when you're done kind of getting out your layout, what you can do, I like to do it in pencil first, just so that I know that I like the way it looks. And then I'll go in with a thicker marker and retrace them and then erase the pencil marks, just so that I know that I like the way it looks before. And like I said, you can make any kind of shapes that you want, or you can freehand it. I think this is the best way to get it to look a little bit more fancy. Okay, so that's kind of an example of like a layout you can do for a page with your shapes. I'm not actually going to draw anything in them, but what I am going to do is in the next coming weeks, I'm going to continue with this kind of online maker club and show you different like illustrative techniques. So if you want to combine them, you know, I'm going to do a couple watercolor videos, some illustrative videos, and you can combine them any way you want. When you're done with all of your pages, I'm not going to do all of them, I'm just gonna do the first one just to show you. And you're gonna line them up together. And then if you have a stapler, if you wanna staple them, that's fine. Or you can do a hole punch. Now keep in mind when you draw your boxes closer to the edge, obviously you don't wanna hole punch them because you're gonna ruin your design. So what I'm gonna do is kind of chew on the bottom. And I'm gonna do 2 on the top. And it's gonna cut off my circle a little bit, but that's okay. Make sure you throw all these little dots in the trash. And then the last thing you're gonna do is you're gonna take your yarn, your ribbon, whatever, mine's a little bit thick, but that's okay. And you're going to tie it around. Now you don't wanna tie it too tight or it's gonna bend the paper, but you also don't wanna tie it too loose or it's gonna be harder to turn the page. So I'm just gonna keep it nice and snug against the end. And then if you wanna leave it like this, you can, or you can trim it. It's probably best if you use a yarn that's a little bit thinner, but this is what I had readily available without kind of destroying all of my nice fancy alpaca yarn. Save that for, you know, mittens and scarves. Right. And last one. And that's it. So now you have a comic book that's flippable. You could do any kind of shapes you want, any layout you want. Use your colored pencils and pencils to fill them in. If you wanted maybe like layer a blank sheet on top as a title page, that's up to you. But that is the basic layout on how to get a neat, fancy looking comic book. And like I said, feel free to draw any kind of shapes that you want. It's best to have an idea of what you want to draw before you cut out your shapes. That way you know what sizes you need. If you need something that's like a little bit thicker than this, then you cut that out ahead of time and then trace your shapes on the page. And that is it. So have fun making your comic books. Feel free to ask your parents' permission to post them online. You can post them to Instagram and tag us in them. It's EBP Library Kits. All right, have a good one. Stay safe.